What is the wildest secret you've ever exposed? When I was young, I had a friend who lived down the street. She had a trampoline and I didn't, so naturally we spent a lot of time together. I also had a cousin who was a year younger than us, whom I saw quite often. Someone decided it was a good idea, or possibly just forgot I was there, to mention the fact that my cousin was adopted while in front of me. That's a pretty big secret in itself, but it also turned out that my friend from down the street was adopted from the same birth mother as my cousin. My friend and my cousin were super secret brother and sister, and I was a 9-year-old with this information. How exciting! Who wouldn't want to know they had a secret brother or sister? So I called them to the tree house on the schoolyard during recess once and spilled the beans. My family hasn't told me a secret since. Who would entrust a child with information like that about friends and actually expect it to stay secret? I was training at a pizza place as part-time help many years ago. My manager was explaining the register procedures to me and everything sounded just a little weird. You could mark out any inventory as baking mistakes up to like 10 pizzas worth a night without any kind of red flags popping up. So I asked them how they stopped people from just taking cash transactions and marking off the inventory. He had never thought about it. 2 weeks later he had the assistant manager arrested for stealing. I didn't work there for long after that. It was a bit awkward. That manager is either incredibly dumb or incredibly honest if that never crossed his mind. I knew 2 people who were first cousins and married to each other. I offhandedly made a remark about it, and found out that was supposed to be a secret. Lay cousins dangereux. One time my mom went to her friend's wedding and the bride took her aside and revealed that the groom was the grandson of Stalin. I love the mental image this sentence conjured. Hey, I just really need you to know that the guy I just married is the grandson of Joseph Stalin. Okay, enjoy the cake. In kindergarten, my best friend told me he knew where his dad's gun was and wanted to bring it to school to show me and our other friends. I told him not to, and that I would tell the teacher if he did. About a week later, at recess, he pulled out the gun. So I went and told the teacher. But being the 90s, he only got suspended and a stern talking to by the police. Edit, to those who are non-sarcastically calling me a snitch, first of all I did warn him beforehand that I would tell, and we remained friends after this. Until I caught him stealing my lunch money years later. He ended up joining the Army or Marines as an adult. Anyways. Secondly, I was raised around guns and am currently a gun owner. I was taught proper safety and common sense, and knew even at that age that my fellow 6-year-old should not be handling a handgun, stolen from his parents, unsupervised on a playground full of children. My friend was a dumbass. I was hanging out with a childhood friend of mine and my brother. His mom tells us to go to his brother's film final presentation. All film students make a short 10-minute film to be graded by the audience, staff, teacher, and fellow students, so we do and go. What we didn't know was at his college he had a persona of an immigrant working hard to make it in the US. In reality he was born in NY and is whitewashed almost as much as his brother. When they, his friends, meet the guy pretending's, family, they ask who we are and we tell them. They ask why don't we have accents, friends and brother, and we say we've all lived here since birth. We hear the next day we completely fucked his social circle and he's been blacklisted by the Colombian clique at school. Not very exciting, but it was the biggest one I uncovered. A few years ago I was cleaning out our attic. My house was my grandparents' house, so there was a lot of very old paperwork. I was curious, so I was combing through all of it. In one box I found divorce papers from 1952 with my grandmother's name and some unknown man's name. I showed them to my mother and she let me know that my grandmother was married for 2 years before my grandfather. This may not sound very shocking, but the story of why they got the divorce was eye-opening. Turns out grandmother married the guy right after college and moved to Detroit. There he turned into an abusive ass. She couldn't get a divorce because he wouldn't allow her to get one. Turns out it was hard for women to get a divorce if the husband didn't want it. So she had to convince him to get a divorce. So she shot him in the ass with her gun and moved back here to Tennessee. He mailed her the papers. No one but my mother knew this. So now I have an interesting story for my grandmother's old gun. We were at a pool party and one of the girls was lying on a sun lounge by the pool. I picked the sun lounge up by one end and was about to throw her in the pool, but then thought I should ask so as not to be a jerk. She said it was fine, so into the pool she went. Unfortunately she had forgotten her phone was in her pocket, so it was drowned at the bottom of the pool. She borrowed her mum's old phone to use as a replacement, and noticed her mum hadn't erased all the texts in her inbox. She saw one from a name she didn't recognize and opened it. It was her mum's boyfriend. She had been cheating on my friend's dad for years with this guy, and my friend brought it up. It all came out and they got divorced. I guess you could say you threw her into the deep end. My asshole boss owing over $500,000 to the IRS. A lot of us immediately jumped ship. My new job is in the same building and I had the pleasure of witnessing the FTP raid his office in full riot gear. Haven't seen his doors open since. Found out my dad had a kid with his ex-wife, that he abandoned and instructed never to contact him again. This was years before he met my mum. Got a Facebook message in 2009 saying basically, "Hi, I think we have the same dad. Hey, it's me, brother." I knew this one girl who lied about having thyroid cancer in order to get her friends to come back to her. She told me details that weren't biologically correct and claimed that she got shots every month to stop the cancer and that the shots would stop working after she turns 20 and she would die. Since I was a biology nerd at the time, I knew that what she was saying wasn't even correct and called her out on it. She ended up changing her story and claimed she got the shot when she was 7 in Sri Lanka. Most of her friends didn't realize she was lying until I pointed out all the wrong facts. I honestly don't feel bad that she doesn't have anyone else left, because cancer is not something you lie about. One of my friends, A, was staying at another friend of mine's B house. During the night, B's boyfriend got up and snuck into A's room she was staying in. They had sex all night. He then snuck back into B's bed and they both acted like nothing happened. A told me thinking she was so great that B's boyfriend couldn't resist her and she was so much better than B. I was disgusted and told B. So let me get this straight. B's FFTPA with his D. I was really into this cute manager at the pool where I worked. After telling my friends at a sleepover, they both revealed at the same time that they had hooked up with him previously, to the surprise of all of us. After talking to more people at the pool, it was discovered that the manager was hooking up and sleeping with not just my two friends, but a number of girls at the facility. This wouldn't be a problem except he was hooking up with his employees in the storage area at the pool while on duty, and, as it was a pool, most of the girls employed were ages 16 to 20. Fast forward a bit, upper management found out, and an interview from the human resources later, I found out he was fired and banned from the pool deck. Not sure if he got in more trouble, but from what I've heard he now works again as a lifeguard for another pool. Edit, because it seems relevant, this happened in California, where the age of consent is 18 and he was 26 at the time. Worth it, that guy after being fired. When my sister was 19, almost 6 years ago now, she met a guy online and fell in love. Surprisingly, we lived pretty close to him. We loved to sit in her room and gossip about him and trade off the keyboard to say things to him and make him confused. He was Vietnamese and he seemed pretty funny online, and my sister decided to finally meet up with him at a park. Everything went great. So great in fact, my parents decided to take advantage of my sister's great mood and go out to eat Mexican food. We are all laughing and talking about the date, but I'm feeling a bit left out of the conversation since I'm the youngest, so I blurt out, "It's so crazy how easily you met him online." Silence. Apparently my sister told my parents she met him through a mutual friend, since my parents were a bit helicopter-y and thought everyone online was a middle-aged rapist. RIP my sister's relationship, 2010 to 2011. After 15 years of being molested, I was finally able to reveal to my two best friends what my older brother was doing to me. This later led to him getting arrested and not being able to be near my household for 5 years. This caused quite a stir in my family and split them into two, those who were on my side and the others with him. My mom blames herself for what happened to me and wanted to kill herself for failing me, and my dad grew a bit colder and depressed. I'm one of about 3 people who know the results of the paternity and maternity tests a friend of mine took after finding some paperwork about adoption. It turns out his dad is in no way related to him, but his mom pops up for above a normal level of his DNA markers, meaning that in all likelihood he's his grandpa's son. As a teen, my friend invited me to his house and he was naked and tried to kiss me. I'm not gay. Edit, this is the wildest secret I had ever exposed drunk at a birthday party for one of our mutual friends only about a month ago. I had never told anyone else before. He tried the naked man. Told my family that my gay uncle's BF made me touch him when I was a kid. Something similarly happened to me when I was in middle school. All I remember was that my aunt's husband would blindfold me and make me suck on something and told me not to bite down. Then he would give me a fruit roll-up after he unblindfolded me. I remember sometimes I would walk by his room, because he all lived together in my grandma's house, and he would ask me if I wanted another fruit roll from time to time. He would always blindfold me and make me suck on something when I did. I never really thought about it until I was in high school and connected the dots, and till this day, I'm scared of what might happen if I told anyone in my family about this. Silver lining, you didn't understand what was happening and for the most part got out of it unscathed. It's truly fucked that your uncle is like that, and you should definitely share your story in case you aren't the only one he pulled something like this with. Most importantly though, there's no one thing you're supposed to feel about this. Whatever you're feeling is what you should be feeling, more or less. Don't think you have to be traumatized in order for what your uncle did to be wrong. I exposed a co-worker who had, over the course of several months, stolen a few $1,000s from the store we worked at. I had a pair of friends who were extremely destructive when they were dating. I think it was one of those relationships that burns really hot and can only explode into flames at the end. They'd been apart for weeks, when one night I saw the guy at a party. We were both drunk and he looked better than I'd ever seen him. I asked him what had been going on in his life because he looked like a new man. He told me he'd been hooking up with his crazy ex again. At that point I'd been holding a secret that this crazy ex was also hooking up with his worst enemy, so juvenile, but we were in college, so, whatever. I was so sick of the toxicity between them that I told him he was really stupid and that she'd been hooking up with his Voldemort. Cut to him being arrested for taking a coffee mug and breaking it over this guy's head, making him bleed in a public coffee shop. He also spit in the face of his ex. I regret saying anything, but it effectively ended their relationship, so I guess that's good. Macron__/Macron. The year was 88, I was coming to the end of my 3 years in the signals. Just coming back from leave and on the train reading a book, few other squaddies walking through the carriage, 2 of them sat in front of me, they were both sipping alcohol, then after about 3 stops they were joined by a third. Now these guys start by saying what a wild time they had in Spain and then go on to describe to the third that they had nailed this bird. They go on to describe they drugged and raped her, for an hour and 20. I reported the shit hit the fan. I made a statement. They were given sentences, but one of the brother were arrested and sentenced to 3 years. The lady was 16, and was raped by 4 men, the 4th was never found. Late to the party, but I got a calmer story. Married my high school sweetheart. Didn't last long. Divorced due to him cheating. He was in the military at the time. Fast forward 4 years later when I enlist in the military. When wrapping up my paperwork to ship to basic, they ask me if my last name is Smith. I tell them it hasn't been that in 4 years since I divorced my ex. Turns out he never reported to the military. We divorced and collected extra pay for being married and having a dependent on me for 4 years. They reported it and he owes back pay of over $24,000 to the government. I worked for a corporation. The store manager hired a girl and fudged her paperwork because she was too young to work there. He knew the girl, she was a family friend of his. Another manager had sex with her and knocked her up. They transferred the manager and fired the girl. When I called the store manager out on it, they fired me. It's a speculative secret, but I think it may be true. One of my friends married a really rich Vietnamese girl and brought her to America. She spent almost no time with him and all of a sudden he didn't need a job for a whole year and his wife was still in Vietnam while he filled out immigration documents for her. If it was my wife, I would have had those documents filled out ASAP, and he didn't complete them for a few months. A couple years went by of them hardly seeing each other. They got a divorce. I think he was paid to sneak her into the country by marriage. The crazier thing, he died a few months after their divorce and I think her family was behind it. I have told no one about this. A girl I knew had a wheelchair fetish. I had to tell 2 friends that the girl they were really into and sleeping with was also involved with the other. It did not feel good to reveal, since she was a close friend of my girlfriend at the time, but they had to know. A girl I dated tells guys that her grandmother is dying so she can get close to them and emotionally manipulate them. Told every guy I knew once I found out she was lying. Fuck you, Melissa. My 7th grade social studies teacher wasn't reading things she graded for months. I rephrased and then later wrote nonsense until noticed. Miss Sporek, slacker ass, but you're were a fox. I had a cousin who got arrested for embezzlement but told the family she went away for 2 years to go to nursing school. I didn't know exactly what happened, but I knew the nursing school thing was bullshit. I was able to find the court docket online and showed it to an aunt who was thoroughly convinced that the cousin had told the truth. I told my friend in the 6th grade I wear female underwear. We live together now and we tell each other it's for the financial benefit. Plot twist, you are a grill. Oscar is gay. By Michael Scott. That my supervisor is screwing a fellow coworker out of his raise/cola. How could someone steal someone else's refreshing carbonated beverage? That's just crossing the line. What a dick. It's so depressing that people can just pop in and do such a thing. My cousin had a blue-eyed baby boy when she was 16, let's say she names him Craig. A few years later she marries and has another child by a man named Craig. I know it's an odd coincidence but it's true. No one tells little Craig that Big Craig is not his father and he grows up thinking as such. I spilt the beans by accident one day, talking about his mom's high school pregnancy and how his dad left her. When we were hanging out, I didn't realize he didn't know. He didn't believe me at first until I pointed out Big Craig has brown eyes. Big Craig could have one dominant and one recessive gene. Mitochondria are the powerhouse of the cell. During a divorce which mostly turned my family against me, divorce doesn't really happen in my family and I got blamed for letting my marriage fall apart. I was able to reveal that my ex-wife was fucking the same guy that talked my 13-year-old sister into losing her virginity to him when he was 17. My ex knew this had happened and somehow thought it was okay. They're still together and my family is now on my side instead of hers. Couple more details, he was my friend at the time, 13 years ago, was kicked out of his house by his bitch of a mom so I and my parents invited him to live with us. He proceeded to completely take advantage of my family, lied and kind of turned them against me when I tried to kick him out and then he fucked my sister and now my family hates him. My ex thinks they all just need to get over it. The nurse who was beating our geriatric patients. I put in a report, there was an investigation and now she can never work in any type of patient care position again. Guy I was about to play college baseball with, definitely a weird dude. Always talked about how him and his wife had an open relationship. But he was the type of guy to brag about anything and everything and lied to look cool, so I just kinda brushed it off. Fast forward a few months after meeting him, I end up talking to a girl who is related to his wife. Around this time the weird guy starts hanging out with his new girlfriend slash FWB here in the town the college was in. One thing led to another and he couldn't make grades, so he got cut and had to go back home. I still happened to be talking to the girl mentioned prior, and she brought up how much she didn't like him and that he kept making advances towards her, and I asked her if she ever met his girlfriend. That was when I found out Mr. Weird Guy didn't have an open relationship at all. His wife divorced him within a month and I have no idea what happened to him. A new officer arrived on board our ship. My buddy and I were talking to her at the end of a training event. Just bullshitting about where you from, what you do for fun, etc. She mentioned her family and city she was from. My buddy calls me later that night. Something had stuck out about her father's name, not a standard name. He had watched a special on John Bennett Ramsey recently. Turns out, the new officer was John Bennett Ramsey's best friend when she was a kid. The Ramseys were at her house for dinner the night John Bennett was killed. We never talked to her or anyone else about it. She left the ship at one point for a few weeks, missing and underway, and research showed she went back to the city council, with her family, to have them release police records that they said would clear her family's name. We looked up old photos of John Bennett and sure enough there was our new officer as a child next to her in the photos. Her father has been suspected numerous times as the killer. Not really wild, but definitely my biggest secret telling fuck up. I was the first person my sister told she was pregnant. Now I had loped all my family members on FB into a family group, and I made a post saying I'm gonna be an uncle. And set the privacy to not show to any family members. And then somehow my aunt, who comments on literally everything I post on FB, commented what? I triple checked she was on the list that couldn't see the post. She was, deleted the post, apologized profusely to my sister after my aunt told her entire side of the family before my sister could, and I have used Facebook a fraction of a % of what I used to. I take full responsibility for it, but I don't trust FB with privacy modes anymore. When I was in high school, there was a young teacher no one liked. You could tell she'd become Miss Finster when she got older, but right now she still had her youth and okay looks. I'm in the computer lab, which overlooks this wooded area by the school that's left wild, tall grass, thick shrubs, overgrown trees, you name it. I see her come through there, adjusting her clothes. Not a big deal by itself, it's a seldom used shortcut between areas of the school. Then I see the principal a few feet behind her, adjusting his clothes, specifically the zipper of his pants. I don't know how the rumors got started a few months later when she announced she was pregnant. When I was 16 I had a very long, passionate makeout session with my girlfriend in my car near my place. Just before her parents showed up to pick her up we went back to my place. It was pretty late so I went straight to bed. Laying there thinking about sex, etc. my mom came in to kiss me goodnight. In my mostly asleep state, I put one hand on her breast and one on the back of her neck and stuck my tongue deep in her mouth. The horror in her eyes was burned into my memory as she said, "What the hell are you doing, you sicko?" Told this to a big group of friends at a drunken college grad party about 6 years later. Snowden be like, well, you see. Ex-girlfriend's mom was still in contact with her pedophile stepdad. They were planning to get a house together near his surety in a remote northern town with their 7-year-old daughter, ex's half-sister. I called Cass and his surety was charged. The stepdad went back to jail till his appeal date and mom got regular visits from services. Fuck em. Trailer trash. Secrets are no fun, secrets hurt someone. I exposed one of the most trusted members of my friend circle had managed to cheat with nearly every one of his closest guy friends' wives and girlfriends, over a dozen women. I exposed another friend who molested a 12-year-old. Both of these secrets got me hated and branded a liar. I discovered that my ex-wife and former best friend were going to hotels to watch child porn and have sex. At the time he was married, about to adopt his wife's 7-year-old son. He was a police detective in juvenile sex crimes, a leader at my Buddhist temple, and a highly respected member of the community. I told his wife, she divorced him, I divorced my wife, and I moved to another city. Since then I have quietly told a couple people what happened, but I don't think they believe me. They're still friends with him, he's still a highly respected member of the community. I've never seen or heard from my ex-wife since I moved, and I'm glad for it. Edited for correct wording, pointed out by /u/baby ninja Jesus. Most people assume that I'm a female until I show them these nuts. I hung out with some people that studied at a Catholic university. Most of the academic staff were priests and nuns. Obviously they were celibate. Except for one, who was having a secret affair with one of his students. She was in her 20s, he was in his 40s. At least it was odd, but not illegal odd. I can't remember how I found out, but it was definitely something not widely known. A couple of months after I heard it, I was drinking with some friends and accidentally blurted it out. All's well that ends well. He left the priesthood, and now they have at least one child. That my colleague was faking her whole life. I felt something was wrong, whilst everyone was lapping it up. Then I picked up on inconsistencies, and my bullshit alarm would go off whenever she'd talk about her life. I subtly spoke to her about it, but she insisted it was all true, but it just increasingly less believable. It was by chance that I bumped into one of her old colleagues, who basically confirmed everything that I had thought. The reason she left her old job was because she slipped up and everyone realized she'd been faking her whole life. I felt kind of sorry for her. Her life had gone to shit and she elaborated this whole amazing life to cope with it, I think. She knew I knew, but I never told anyone else. I think she's moved on to a new job now. This is kind of vague. Can you elaborate on what sort of things she would make up? Someone I once considered a good friend, slept with his best friend's mum. As cool as it seems in the movies, the reality is quite the opposite. My ex-friend told his ex-GF about it, to make her jealous during a fight. Stupid. She then told me. I kept it a secret for years because I knew the fallout of such an event becoming public knowledge. Recently a very close friend of mine became involved with my ex-friend. I was unaware of their relationship at this time. She asked me about my ex-friend and what I thought about him. I told her I am no longer friends with said person due to the disrespect he shows to his friends, and cited the mum banging incident as an example. This last conversation was via text message. Little did I know that my close friend, who was already involved with the motherfucker, was sitting next to the person whose mum got fucked. He saw the text message. Cue shitstorm. My dad is Santa Claus. I heard my mom having sex with one of my brother's best friends. I told my sister and she told my brother. Liked what you saw? Hit like, subscribe and the bell icon for more crazy Reddit content.